In the quaint suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, where picket fences line the streets and perfectly trimmed lawns adorned each house, there lived a man named James Carter. James was a man of staunch beliefs and unwavering principles, but unfortunately, his principles were tainted by the poison of prejudice. James had always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards his neighbor, Mr. Patel, an immigrant from India who had moved in a few years ago. He despised the Patel family for no other reason than the color of their skin and the unfamiliarity of their culture. Despite Mr. Patel's efforts to be friendly and kind, James refused to reciprocate, choosing instead to distance himself and fuel his prejudice with gossip and rumors. One fateful evening, James overheard a conversation between Mr. Patel and another neighbor. They were discussing a business deal that seemed lucrative. James, blinded by his bias, saw an opportunity to sabotage Mr. Patel and satisfy his own prejudices. With cunning intent, James anonymously reported Mr. Patel to the authorities, fabricating allegations of tax evasion and fraud. He watched with satisfaction as law enforcement descended upon Mr. Patel's home, conducting a thorough investigation. Weeks passed, and James reveled in the downfall of his neighbor, relishing in the sense of superiority that his actions afforded him. But his satisfaction was short-lived when the truth began to unravel. It turned out that Mr. Patel was innocent of all charges. The authorities found no evidence to support James's claims, and it became apparent that James had orchestrated the entire ordeal out of malice and prejudice. As the reality of his actions set in, James was consumed by guilt and remorse. The once vibrant neighborhood now viewed him with disdain and distrust. He had become the very thing he despised, a villain driven by hatred and ignorance. With a heavy heart, James faced the consequences of his actions. But the true punishment came from within, as James grappled with the realization of the harm he had caused and the lives he had shattered. Each passing day seemed to compound his remorse, the walls of his home becoming a prison of his own making. He couldn't bear to face his neighbors, the accusing stares and whispered judgments weighing on his soul. Despite his desire to make amends, James found himself paralyzed by fear and shame. How could he ever undo the harm he had caused? How could he face Mr. Patel and his family, knowing the pain he had inflicted upon them? But amidst the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged, a chance for redemption. It began with a knock on his door, hesitant and tentative. James hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest as he approached. With trembling hands, he opened the door to find Mr. Patel standing before him, his expression a mixture of anger and sorrow. James's throat tightened as he struggled to find the words to respond. He wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but the weight of his guilt rendered him speechless. "I know what you did," Mr. Patel continued, his voice trembling with barely contained anger. "I know it was you who called the authorities. Why, Mr. Carter? What did we ever do to deserve such treatment?" I'm sorry," James whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I regret what I did. I was wrong, and I can't undo the harm I caused, but I want to try to make things right." With that, Mr. Patel turned and walked away, leaving James alone with his guilt and shame. But despite the pain of rejection, James knew that he could not give up hope. He had a debt to repay, a debt owed not only to Mr. Patel and his family but to himself. Determined to atone for his sins, James embarked upon a journey of self-discovery and redemption. He began by reaching out to the authorities, confessing to his false report and accepting whatever punishment they deemed fit. It was a humbling experience, to stand before the law and acknowledge his wrongdoing, but James knew that it was the first step towards healing. But repentance was not enough. James knew that if he truly wanted to make amends, he must confront his own prejudices and strive to overcome them. He attended workshops and seminars, engaging in difficult conversations about race and privilege. With each passing day, James felt the walls of prejudice that had once confined him begin to crumble. He reached out to Mr. Patel once more, this time with a genuine offer of friendship and reconciliation. To his surprise, Mr. Patel accepted, albeit with caution and skepticism. As they sat together in a cafe, sipping tea and exchanging stories, James felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had finally found the courage to confront his own demons, to acknowledge the darkness within himself and strive towards the light. James's journey toward redemption was marked by both challenges and triumphs. As he worked to dismantle his own prejudices, he found himself confronting uncomfortable truths about himself and the world around him. But with each revelation came an opportunity for growth, a chance to break free from the chains of ignorance and hatred that had once bound him. One of the most profound moments of James's journey came during a community event organized by a local advocacy group. The event aimed to promote diversity and inclusion within the neighborhood, inviting residents from all backgrounds to come together and celebrate their differences. Initially hesitant to attend, James forced himself out of his comfort zone, determined to confront his own biases head-on. As he mingled with his neighbors, sharing stories and laughter, he began to see the beauty in diversity, the richness of experience that comes from embracing different perspectives. It was during a panel discussion on race and privilege that James had a revelation that would change the course of his life forever. Listening to the heartfelt stories of his neighbors, many of whom had faced discrimination and prejudice firsthand, James felt a profound sense of empathy wash over him. He realized that his own experiences of marginalization, though different in nature, had given him a glimpse into the pain and suffering endured by others. He understood now that prejudice was not just a personal failing, but a systemic issue rooted in centuries of oppression and inequality. With this newfound understanding, James became an outspoken advocate for social justice within his community. He volunteered his time and resources to support local initiatives aimed at empowering marginalized groups, working tirelessly to bridge the divides that had once separated him from his neighbors. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of James's journey was his relationship with Mr. Patel and his family. Over time, their friendship blossomed into a deep and lasting bond built on mutual respect and understanding. Through honest and open dialogue, James and Mr. Patel learned to confront their differences with compassion and empathy, forging a connection that transcended the barriers of race and culture. From bitter enemies to steadfast allies, their relationship was a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness and redemption. "I never thought I'd see the day when we'd be like this," James said, and Mr. Patel smiled warmly, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and affection. "Nor I, my friend," he replied. "But I suppose stranger things have happened." In that fleeting instant, James knew that he had found his place in the world, a place defined not by prejudice or hatred, but by love and acceptance. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, James felt a sense of peace wash over him, a quiet reassurance that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage and grace. For in the end, he had learned that redemption was not just a destination, but a journey, one that he would continue to walk with humility and gratitude, every step of the way.